Good morning, everyone. My name's Alexandra Tribe. I'm the managing partner at Expatriate Law, and I'm here with Byron James, who is the partner at Expatriate Law based in Dubai. Byron and I are going to discuss briefly the importance of being aware of the procedure and process for online court hearings, now that the majority of court hearings in England are taking place remotely. Byron, would you like to start with the etiquette of these remote hearings?
Well, the first thing to say is that remote hearings are really good for people who are based outside of England, because prior to remote hearings being commonplace, it was quite often that people had to travel all the way to England, taking time off work, having to arrange childcare, with all of the expense and nuisance value that that caused. So remote hearings are actually really good for people who are based outside of England. The remote hearings themselves take place in exactly the same way that a court hearing would if you were there in person. And by that I mean the formalities are the same. So it's still a very serious occasion, and therefore you should treat it accordingly. When you go into the online courtroom, you'll have, just like we're talking now, individual screens for each person who's in the meeting. It's important when you're in the meeting to keep your microphone on mute unless you're supposed to be talking. And you'll know if you're supposed to be talking because your legal team or the judge will direct you to start speaking. And that will be discussed with your legal team before the hearing takes place. It's also important to remember that as it's a formal occasion, you must dress smartly. You don't need to wear a suit, but you must look like you're taking it seriously, because it is obviously a serious occasion. And you must behave appropriately. And imagine that you, even though you're sitting at home or in an office somewhere, that you are in fact still in a court setting, even though where you might physically be is actually informal. And then ultimately, just remember that you're always being watched. So your face is always on the screen. You must always have your camera on. And you must make sure that the place where you're taking part in the court proceedings is private, because quite often in family cases they remain private, and that nobody else is listening in that shouldn't be, or is off screen listening in and trying to give you feedback or input. That's not allowed. Just one final thing, it can be awkward if you're in the same house as the person who's on the other side of the case, which is quite common in family law cases.
Yes.
So if that's going to happen, then I'd make sure that you find a very private part of the house where you know you're not going to be disturbed. And if that becomes challenged in any way, then I would raise it with your legal team or even the judge as soon as possible.
Yes.
What about you, Alexandra? Do you have any tips yourself?
I would say that really helpfully covers most of it. In my experience, it's also helpful to have another device like a laptop or mobile phone or iPad that you can have the court bundle on, and to leave your laptop to be your face to the judge. So you're not having to worry about screens being frozen or computers playing up. You've got a separate device for your court bundle. That will really make things much calmer for you and easier to deal with. So that was what I'd suggest.
And if any technical issues do arise, then also draw those to the attention of your legal representatives or the court as soon as possible. Because it's normal and it's totally fine. Nobody's going to be mad with you. But if you don't draw it to people's attention, then they might not realise, even if they think you've been sitting very still for a long period of time because you're frozen on the screen.
That's really helpful. I'm sure that will be equally helpful to everyone watching. Thanks, Byron.
Thanks, Alexandra.